Hello everybody, welcome to Diksha Online. So in today's lecture, in the chapter Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants, we will be discussing about the next lecture, which is lecture 5. So let us see the chapter overview. The chapter overview includes flower, a fascinating organ. Then we had discussed about the pre-fertilization events and structures and events, including pollination, what are the different types of pollination. And we also learned in the recent lecture, we learned about the pollen-pistil interaction, isn't it? So then we are going to now discuss about the process of double fertilization. After that, after fertilization, what are the structures and events? And lastly, we will be discussing about some of the unique events such as apomixis and polyembryony. Okay. A quick review of what you learnt in the previous lecture. In the previous lecture, we learnt about pollen-pistil interaction, how the pistil recognizes and takes a decision. It recognizes whether the pollen is of the right type or the wrong type, and then it decides whether to accept it or to reject it. And then we saw how the pollen grain passes, the pollen tube enters into the ovule. There are different routes it takes in order to enter into the ovule, isn't it? And then we learnt about some of the important processes of artificial hybridization. We had said that artificial hybridization is a very important step, is an approach towards improving the crops, that is crop improvement program. In that we had seen in bisexual, if the female parent has a bisexual flower, you have to remove the anthers by a process called emasculation. And then you have to carry out a process called bagging to prevent cross pollination by unwanted pollen. Okay. Now in this particular lecture, we will be discussing about a phenomenon that is referred to as double fertilization. Now, fertilization means fusion of the male gamete with the female gamete. In this case, why it is called double fertilization? Please remember that the pollen tube has brought with it not just one male gamete, it has brought with it two male gametes. That means there are two fusions happening over here. Because there are two fusions involved, we call this process as double fertilization. Now see the second point. One of the male gametes, out of the two male gametes, one of the male gametes moves towards the principal cell, the most important cell in the egg apparatus, that is the egg cell, to result in the formation of a zygote. This is the actual fertilization. And what do we call this process? We call it as syngamy. So remember, out of the two male gametes, one of them moves towards the egg and fuses with the egg nucleus, and this results in the formation of a diploid zygote. What about the other male gamete? The other male gamete moves towards the two polar nuclei. If you remember the structure of the embryo sac, we had discussed that the largest cell of the embryo sac is the central cell, which has two nuclei situated in the center called polar nuclei. So the other male gamete fuses with the two polar nuclei, and that results in the formation of a single triploid nucleus. Why triploid? Because there are three nuclei involved here. N plus N is the male nucleus plus N plus N is the polar nuclei plus N, which is brought from the male gamete. So one male gamete is fusing with two polar nuclei to result in the formation of a triploid primary endosperm nucleus, which is abbreviated as PEN, and this process is referred to as the triple fusion. So now you know why this process is called double fertilization. It is called double fertilization because it involves two fusions. One is the syngamy and one is the triple fusion. Now to make things very clear to you, let us discuss about it in greater detail. So I hope you know that inside the ovule, I'm not going to show the entire ovule. I will just show the body of the ovule and then the integuments. So by now you know that this portion where the integument is absent is referred to as the micropyle. The opposite side of the ovule is referred to as the chalaza. Now sitting inside the body of the ovule within the nucleus is the embryo sac. So you all remember the structure of the embryo sac, isn't it? Now in the embryo sac towards the micropylar end, we had discussed that there is a group of 3 cells, okay, and towards the center, the largest cell of the embryo sac. Now I'm going to highlight the cell of the embryo sac which is the largest with its boundaries. So this cell which I'm going to highlight now is the largest cell of the embryo sac, and this cell which I'm showing you right now is the central cell, and there are 2 nuclei situated in the center which belongs to the central cell. And what about the chalazal end of the embryo sac? There are a group of 3 cells which are referred to as antipodals. So now I showed you the cells which are located near the micropyle. The 2 cells which are present on the either sides are called the synergids, and snugly fitted behind the synergids is the egg. Okay, so let us label the parts now. Which is this largest cell of the embryo sac? The largest cell of the embryo sac is called the central cell. Okay, and what is the nucleus of the central cell called? The nucleus, the 2 nuclei of the central cell are referred to as the polar nuclei. They are haploid, so it is haploid plus haploid. They are not together, they are separately present, so these are referred to as the polar nuclei. Now what is this together called? This set of 3 cells. Now these set of 3 cells we had already learnt, this is referred to as the egg apparatus, isn't it? So there is egg apparatus towards the micropylar region. Behind the egg apparatus there is polar nuclei which is located in the largest cell of the embryo sac, which is called the central cell. Of course, we saw near the chalazal end there are a group of 3 cells which are called the antipodals. Okay, now what has come closer to the micropyle? We saw last class what enters into the synergid through the filiform apparatus. The pollen tube enters, and if you remember, the pollen tube carries what? It carries 2 male gametes. So this tube like structure that I have shown here is the pollen tube which is approaching the ovule. In the last class you saw, in the last lecture you saw that the pollen tube pierces into the synergid through the filiform apparatus, and what is there in the pollen tube? There are 2 male gametes. Okay, so 2 male gametes are being brought together by the pollen tube carried in them. Now let me magnify the synergids for you over here. So we had seen that there are 2 synergids, and sitting behind the synergid is the egg. And now you know above the synergid, see this above the egg apparatus in the central cell. So let me show you the boundary of the central cell. This is the boundary of the central cell. So this is the central cell which I am showing you here, and above the central cell, above the egg apparatus, you can see 2 polar nuclei. Now you know that the polar nuclei is nothing but the nucleus of the central cell. Okay, so now inside the synergid, all of you remember, in the synergid, the mouth of the synergid, there are finger-like projections which are infoldings of the cell wall called filiform apparatus, and this is the nucleus of the synergid, and this is the nucleus of the egg. We are concerned about the nucleus of the egg, which is this. Let me shade it completely, and these are the polar nuclei, okay, located within the central cell. So this is the egg. Let me label it egg cell, and this is the egg nucleus. Okay, so now what has happened is the pollen tube has entered into the synergid, and the moment the pollen tube enters into the synergid, it ruptures, it releases the 2 male gametes. See, 1 and 2. 2 male gametes are released because inside, all this while it was inside the pollen tube. Now the pollen tube, after it has entered into the synergid, it has liberated the 2 male gametes. Now what is going to happen? Now out of these 2 male gametes, follow the arrows, one of the male gamete is going to fuse with the egg nucleus, very close only, isn't it? Egg is present immediately closer in the immediate vicinity. So one of them fuses with the egg nucleus. Now what about the other nucleus? The other nucleus has to travel a certain distance, and it goes and fuses with the 2 polar nuclei. Okay, now what is this process called where there is fusion between the male gamete and the egg nucleus? It is referred to as syngamy. We saw in the previous slide. One of the male gametes fuses with the egg nucleus in order to form. So it's actually the process which results in the formation of a diploid zygote, isn't it? One of the male gametes fuses with the egg cell, the egg nucleus. This is referred to as the syngamy. And now what is this process called where you have a set of how many nuclei? 3 nuclei. Which are those 3? The 2 nuclei which are located in the central cell are nothing but the polar nuclei, and one of the male gamete is moving over there. So what do we call this process? We call this process as the triple fusion, isn't it? So I hope it is clear now. We have discussed about two major types of fusion here. One is referred to as the syngamy and one is referred to as the triple fusion. Now you know why this process is referred to as what? Double fertilization, because it involves two different processes of fusion. Is that clear to all of you? So once again I'm telling you, in the embryo sac towards the micropyle you have the egg apparatus. So above the egg apparatus you have the polar nuclei that belongs to which cell? That belongs to the largest cell. Please remember, the largest cell of the embryo sac is the central cell. Inside the central cell you will find this paired polar nuclei. Okay, now what is this tube here? This is the pollen tube. Please remember the pollen tube. In the last lecture we saw how the pollen tube reaches the ovule and how it enters the synergid. Please remember, it enters through what is this apparatus? The filiform apparatus of the synergid. And now let me shade the nuclei of the synergids differently so that you don't get confused. So once inside the synergid, the pollen tube will liberate the two male gametes. So these are the male gametes. One of the male gametes fuses with the egg cell. One of the male gametes reaches the polar nuclei. So when it fuses with the egg cell, it is called syngamy. When it fuses with the polar nuclei, why it is called triple fusion? It is called triple fusion because it involves 3 nuclei. 2 of them are polar nuclei that belong to the central cell and one of them is the male gamete. Clear? So this is the process of double fertilization. Now what is the consequence of double fertilization? Let me again draw the ovule here. So this is the body of the ovule and let me show the integuments. Now fertilization has successfully happened inside. So what has happened now? Now let us see the embryo sac inside. Now inside the embryo sac you will see that there is a zygote, there is a cell sitting here which is now the synergids have degenerated. Now notice that the antipodals also have degenerated. Okay, antipodals are also not clear because now the process of fertilization is almost completed. It's over now. So now near the micropyle you will no longer find the egg cell, but you will find a cell which is a product of syngamy. So what is this product of syngamy? It is called a zygote. It now has a diploid constitution of chromosome. Now what is the cell above the zygote? Let me magnify, let me highlight the cell here. So this largest cell which is sitting above the zygote and which now has, see the boundary of the cell here, this is the largest cell of the embryo sac which now has a single nucleus, isn't it? Now can you remember and tell me this single nucleus is a product of what? It is a product of triple fusion. So now this cell which is formed is no longer called the central cell. It is called the primary endosperm cell. So the full form of this is primary endosperm cell. And this nucleus which is a product of triple fusion, please remember, how did this nucleus come about? The nucleus came about by the fusion of 1, 2, 3 nuclei. Can you name the nuclei? The 2 nuclei which were earlier found in the central cell before fertilization, they were called the polar nuclei. They were both haploid. And which is the other one? The other one which was brought by the pollen tube was one of the male gametes. So I'm writing one male gamete here. So because all the three fuse together, what did we call this process? We called it as the triple fusion. So zygote is sitting below now, which is a product of, please remember, what is the zygote a product of? The zygote is a product of syngamy, that is the fusion between the egg nucleus and one of the male gametes. Isn't it? Now, what is this nucleus a product of? This nucleus is a product of triple fusion. Now, isn't this nucleus triploid? Why is it triploid? Because the polar nuclei are haploid and the male gamete is also haploid. So it is haploid plus haploid, diploid plus haploid. It is triploid. So this nucleus, the name given to this nucleus now, which is sitting inside the primary endosperm cell, please don't call this central cell anymore. You should call it the primary endosperm cell. This nucleus, which is a product of triple fusion, is now referred to as primary endosperm nucleus, abbreviated as PEN. So primary endosperm nucleus. So we have a primary endosperm cell. So all this, what I'm showing you here, it is post double fertilization. What is seen inside the ovule, inside the embryo sac, after what has happened? After double fertilization has taken place. So now tell me, what did the central cell become? The central cell has now become, so it was a central cell. When it was central cell before fertilization, pre-fertilization. So before fertilization, it was a central cell. Now it has become a primary endosperm cell. And the nucleus, which is a product of triple fusion, why is it triploid? Because it is two polar nuclei. Let me write two in brackets here. Two polar nuclei and one male gamete fused together. Each of them have haploid chromosomal complement. So 3 into haploid, the cell, the nucleus now becomes triploid. So the primary endosperm cell with a triploid nucleus, which is called the primary endosperm nucleus. And what is there near the micropyle of the ovule now? Now near the micropyle of the ovule, there is no egg apparatus, there is no egg, there is no synergid, because now the egg has become fused with one of the male gametes. So very, very important. What do we find near the micropyle? We find the diploid zygote, which is a product of what? Which is a product of one of the male gametes fusing with the egg nucleus. What did we call that process? Syngamy. So now very clearly here you can see syngamy plus triple fusion. So these two together, that's why we call it as what? That's why we call it as double fertilization. So I hope the concept is clear to you. Central cell became, so what you should remember here is central cell became the primary endosperm cell. This whole cell over here, this becomes a primary endosperm cell, and its nucleus is now called the primary endosperm nucleus, which is a product of triple fusion. Is it diploid or haploid or triploid? It is triploid. What about the zygote? The zygote is diploid. Zygote is a product of syngamy, and primary endosperm nucleus is a product of triple fusion. Syngamy and triple fusion together become, the process is referred to as double fertilization. Okay. So see here, this is a diagrammatic representation of how the pollen tube, we have learnt this already in the previous lecture, how the pollen germination happens on the stigma. And see here, the pollen tube is growing down the style, it reaches the ovary and then it enters into the micropylla. See, the pollen tube is entering into the micropylar region. Isn't it? We all saw in the last class that the pollen tube, which is growing down, what does the pollen tube have? Just for your knowledge, it is led by the nucleus of the vegetative cell. This is what helps in maintaining the length of the pollen tube. But we are not concerned about this. Behind that, there are two cells. What are the two cells which are floating in the pollen tube? They are nothing but the two male gametes. Both are haploid. So this is haploid and this is haploid. So this pollen tube, I hope you're remembering that it reaches the micropyle. Now near the micropyle of the ovule, isn't it? The best way to show the micropyle is show the integuments, and you will get a mental orientation of the micropyle. So inside the micropyle there is embryo sac. There is a group of 3 cells. What are these 3 cells? Egg apparatus. One egg here and 2 synergids. And remember, the synergids have folds in the cell wall, which is called the filiform apparatus. So ultimately, the pollen tube enters the ovule, enters through the filiform apparatus and into the synergids. And now we saw it releases the male gametes inside. One of the male gamete fuses with the egg. What about the other male gamete? In the central cell, there are 2 polar nuclei. Isn't it? This cell is the central cell, and one of them fuses with the 2 polar nuclei. That's why it is called double fertilization. See, in this you can see how this pollen tube is entering and it is carrying male gametes in it, and see it is passing through the filiform apparatus. This is the synergid into which it is entering. Notice that the synergid degenerates as soon as, so whichever synergid receives the pollen tube, that synergid degenerates. And see, these are the male gametes. Let me show them here as spots. This is one male gamete, this is the other male gamete. One of the male gamete is going closer to the, so they have shown egg right beside the synergid here, so don't get confused. So this one is fusing with the egg, and one of the male gamete is fusing with the polar nuclei. So which is syngamy and which is triple fusion? The fusion between the male gamete and the egg is referred to as the syngamy, and the fusion between the male gamete and the polar nuclei, because a set of 3 nuclei are fusing, what do we call this? This is referred to as the triple fusion. So all this is about double fertilization itself. Okay, see how the pollen tube is rupturing, it is liberating the 2 male gametes. So the 2 male gametes until now were inside the pollen tube, but now they have been set free in the cytoplasm of the degenerating synergid. And the male gametes will now reach their destination, which is the polar nuclei and the egg nucleus, to form zygote. And can you recall and tell me what will happen to the polar nuclei when they fuse with the male gamete? Yes, they form a triploid nucleus called primary endosperm nucleus. And what will happen to the central cell? We should not call it central cell anymore. We should call it as primary endosperm cell. So just to give you just to clarify things for you and to put things in a proper order, the filiform apparatus we saw helps in the entry of the pollen tube. Then we saw there are 2 types of fusion. That's why it is called double fertilization. Then we saw the 2 products. Sometimes they may ask you for a 2-mark question, name the products of double fertilization. We got a primary endosperm nucleus which is sitting inside a cell now called primary endosperm cell, and we got a, remember it is triploid, and we got a diploid zygote which is a product of syngamy. So the 2 products of double fertilization are zygote and primary endosperm nucleus located within the primary endosperm cell. So now let us see what happens after post-fertilization. We already saw that after fertilization we get 2 major cells. One is the primary endosperm cell with a primary endosperm nucleus which is triploid, and we saw we get a zygote. But that is not all. After that there are so many things that are yet to happen. There is a tissue that is formed called endosperm from, please remember, the endosperm is formed from the primary endosperm nucleus and the primary endosperm cell. See, the name only has endosperm in it. You will see how this happens in a little while. And where does the embryo come from? The embryo comes from the diploid zygote. So please remember, the diploid zygote later develops into an embryo, and the primary endosperm nucleus, which is triploid, sitting inside the primary endosperm cell, will develop into a nourishing tissue. Now embryo requires nourishment. So this nourishment to the developing embryo is provided by, like how in human development we saw there is placenta. the young one in the mother's womb is receiving its nourishment through the placenta. Similarly, in plants, the embryo receives its nourishment from a tissue that is called endosperm. So the primary endosperm nucleus and the primary endosperm cell, they become the endosperm. Let us see how in a few slides, and the zygote develops into the embryo. Meanwhile, the ovule, inside which the embryo sac was there, when all these changes are happening in the embryo sac, which is no longer now called an embryo sac because the synergids are not there, the egg is not there, the antipodals are not there. So, what will happen to the ovule? The ovule starts transforming into what is referred to as the seed. The ovule with a developing embryo and endosperm inside is referred to as the seed. And what happens to the ovary? The ovary becomes the fruit. So let us see again. Remember, this is the ovary, the swollen part of the pistil. So stigma, style, and pistil. Ovary. Now in the ovary you saw that there is the ovule, and the ovule with integument, the protective coverings of the ovule, which are the integument. So what happens to this ovule? The ovule as the zygote. Now imagine this is the zygote, and this is the, what is the large cell now, which is sitting above the zygote. It's not a central cell, it is PEC. By now you should know what is PEC, primary endosperm cell, which is triploid, which has pen in it, that is primary endosperm nucleus. Now this is the zygote. Yes or no? So zygote will start developing into what? It will start developing into embryo. And what will PEC start developing into? It will start developing into a nutritive tissue which provides nourishment to the developing embryo called endosperm. What will the ovule become? The ovule will start becoming the seed. As all these changes are happening within the ovule, it is no longer ovule now, it becomes the seed. And what does the wall of the ovary become? The wall of the ovary becomes the fruit wall. The technical term for the fruit wall is pericarp. See, so many changes are happening. Ovule is becoming the seed, ovary is becoming the fruit wall, the primary endosperm cell gives rise to a nutritive tissue called endosperm. With the primary, let me label this also. What is this? What is the nucleus called? Primary endosperm nucleus. This is what is the triploid nucleus. And then the zygote becomes a multicellular embryo because the plant is multicellular. So how long can the zygote remain unicellular? It can't. It has to divide and divide mitotically, and it develops into an embryo. Okay? So now let us see what happens to the how the endosperm is obtained from the primary endosperm cell. Okay. So this is the ovule, this is the integument, the protective covering, the integument. Okay. Now sitting inside the ovule is, which is the large cell now inside? The central cell has become what? The central cell has, now see, I am not showing antipodals and anything here because all of them have disappeared after fertilization. So this cell has a single large triploid nucleus. Now this nucleus is called, what is it called? Pen. This is the pen, primary endosperm nucleus. And what is this? This is the PEC, primary endosperm cell. Now what is this? The cell which is developing here. This cell which is developing, which is a product of syngamy, is the zygote. See how different the embryo sac looks now. It doesn't have that 7-celled 8-nucleate structure, which is the micropyle. This portion where there is no integument is the micropyle. So zygote is sitting near the micropyle of the ovule. And above the zygote is the central cell, which has now become, don't call it central cell, it has now become primary. See this cell. Let me shade the primary endosperm cell if you are confused. This entire cell, which I am shading right now, which is sitting above the zygote, is the primary endosperm cell. See how the primary endosperm cell is enveloping the zygote, isn't it? The zygote is protected by the primary endosperm cell. So now what happens is, initially only the primary endosperm nucleus, that is PEN, will undergo division. What do you call this particular division where only the nucleus of a cell divides and not the cell itself? It is called karyokinesis, isn't it? So let us see what happens here. So let me show you the primary endosperm cell again. And this is the zygote. Okay, now this is the primary endosperm nucleus. Now see, the primary endosperm nucleus is dividing. There is no formation of cells, only the primary endosperm nucleus divides. So it becomes multinucleated. This primary endosperm cell, PEC, has now become multinucleated. Isn't it? Why? Because which nucleus underwent karyokinesis? The primary endosperm nucleus. Only the nucleus is dividing. So please remember, only karyokinesis is happening, but the cell is one only. One primary endosperm cell only, but with many nuclei. Where did these nuclei come from? These nuclei came from the division of the primary endosperm nuclei, that is PEN. So what do you call this process where only nucleus is dividing? We call it as karyokinesis. The cell is not dividing. Cytokinesis is not happening, but only karyokinesis is happening. See, then what happens is, some of the cells, some of the nuclei which migrate to the periphery, see, let me show you here, they will start developing boundary between them. They will not remain without a boundary for a long time. And this stage, before that I forgot to tell you, we call this kind of division where only karyokinesis happen, we refer to it as free nuclear division. Because why? Only the nucleus is dividing. What is not dividing? The cell is not dividing. Which nucleus is dividing? Primary endosperm nucleus. So these free nuclear divisions initially give rise to an endosperm with many nuclei. I told you that it becomes multinucleate. This stage of the endosperm where there are many free nuclei is referred to as the free nuclear endosperm. But very soon, like I told you, what happens? Cell wall gets laid between the nuclei. And now what has happened? When cell wall starts getting laid around the nuclei, notice that not all the nuclei get enclosed in cell partitions. There are some nuclei which are still floating in the cytoplasm in the center. So whichever tissue which develops partitions or cell wall between them, we call this tissue as cellular endosperm. That means this endosperm has both multinucleate type of endosperm and cellular type of endosperm. So what is this multinucleate type called? The multinucleate type is called free nuclear type. And in the periphery it is called cellular, because in the periphery the nuclei have started developing cell walls. They started developing cell membrane and cell walls on their outside. So together these two become what is referred to as the endosperm. Initially what was it? Initially only the nucleus was dividing. Which nucleus was dividing? Remember, I am talking about primary endosperm cell. Which nucleus was dividing? The primary endosperm triploid nucleus was dividing. What was this stage called? Free nuclear endosperm. When only the nucleus divides and the cell does not divide, we say that the cell undergoes karyokinesis or free nuclear division. This mass of nuclei, this stage where the cell has mass of multiple nuclei is called free nuclear endosperm. And then what starts developing? Cell wall starts developing. When the cell wall starts developing, what do you call that part of the endosperm which has partitions between the nuclei, which has boundaries between the nuclei? We call it as cellular endosperm. Together, the endosperm has free nuclear as well as cellular. Later, most of it becomes cellular, but it is not necessary that all of them become cellular. Like it is shown here, some of the free nuclear may also remain. I will give you an example for that. Okay, so we saw the primary endosperm nucleus undergoes free nuclear divisions to form multinucleate structure, and this multinucleate endosperm is called the free nuclear endosperm. And then very soon partitions will develop between the nuclei to give rise to cellular. Free nuclear plus cellular are the two types of endosperm. Not all of them become cellular. Some of them remain as what? Some of them remain as free nuclear endosperm. Okay, so I hope the concept is clear to all of you. So I'm going to give you a recap here. This was the primary endosperm cell, and this was the zygote. This was the primary endosperm nucleus. So let me label it as PEC cell, and this is PEN. PEN will first undergo karyokinesis. The cell is not dividing. So remember, initially the PEC doesn't divide. So we call these divisions as free nuclear divisions. So the primary endosperm nucleus undergoes, which is triploid, undergoes free nuclear divisions. What is the consequence of a free nuclear division? See what has happened. Zygote is still here. Don't get confused. This is the zygote near the micropylar end of the ovule. And now see, there are more than one PEN. How did so many PEN develop? Because the PEN is undergoing karyokinesis. It is undergoing karyokinesis, which is called free nuclear division. Now what do we call this stage of the endosperm? This stage of the endosperm where the huge cell, which is PEC, has many nuclei, is called the free nuclear endosperm. Correct? Now again I'm going to draw what is going to happen here. So the zygote is here. Some of the nuclei migrate to the periphery, see, of the primary endosperm nucleus, which was dividing by free nuclear division. They will start developing a wall around themselves. That means they become cells. They are no longer just nuclei now, they are cells. Okay, now this part of the endosperm which develops cells in the periphery is called cellular endosperm. Correct? And in the center still you have many nuclei which have not formed cells. What will you still call this? We will still call this the free nuclear endosperm. I hope it is clear. First, the primary endosperm nucleus undergoes free nuclear division to form, what is this free nuclear endosperm? It is multi-nucleate, or it is syncytial. We call this type of a cell which has many nucleus in it as syncytial. Then there are boundaries formed between the nuclei here. That becomes cellular endosperm. Those which don't form boundaries, many nuclei are there, that becomes the free nuclear endosperm. The best example for the endosperm is, you can see when you break open the coconut shell. You bring coconut from the market and you break it open, right? And once you break it open, you will inside find the white part of the coconut, which is very tasty, which is called the kernel. Isn't it? And then you find the water, the tender coconut water inside the coconut. Once you open the coconut, Okay, you find water inside. The kernel or the white part represents the cellular endosperm, which have become cells, whereas the water, that is the tender coconut water that we drink, is consisting of thousands of nuclei in it. It represents the free nuclear endosperm. See, so there is a very good example which we have seen in our day to day life is the coconut. Coconut is actually a seed that you bring from the market, the husked coconut, not the coconut which falls off from the tree. The coconut that you, the tender coconut, the coconut that falls off from the tree is husked. The husks are removed, and inside is what is sold in the market. The inner seed is what is sold. If you bring it home and if you break it open, you will find the white part. That is called the kernel or the coconut meat, which is the cellular endosperm. That means actually the seed has endosperm and tiny embryo is sitting somewhere in the corner. Here we have still showed the zygote only. We have not come to the embryonic development still. Okay, so the coconut, the white part of the coconut which you eat, which you grate, the grated coconut, that is what we grate, no, to use it in cooking. And also we obtain coconut milk from the white part, which is the cellular endosperm. And the water inside, the sweet tasting water inside, the tender coconut water, is the free nuclear endosperm. So like we said, if we were to talk about endosperm, it is obtained from triploid, it is made up of triploid cells. It started off from the primary endosperm nucleus. Very, very important question. Why does the endosperm develop before the embryo? They will ask you a give reason question. In all the previous slide, if you saw, I have shown zygote is still a zygote. I have not done anything to the zygote. That means the zygote is waiting. What is it waiting for? It is waiting for the endosperm to develop. Why it is waiting for the endosperm to develop? Because it needs nourishment. There should be something to nourish the developing zygote, which becomes into a developing embryo. So that's why the zygote sits and waits for the endosperm to form. So why does the endosperm develop before the embryo? Because it provides nourishment to the embryo. And then we saw first the PEN undergoes successive nuclear divisions. What is this nuclear division? Only what happens? Karyokinesis. Karyokinesis only. And then it is followed by what? Followed by formation of cell walls. Then which is that part of endosperm which has cell walls? Cellular endosperm. Wherever partitions or barriers or boundaries develop between the nuclei, that part which has cells in it is called cellular endosperm, and that part where there are still many nuclei is called free nuclear endosperm. And I told you in coconut, the white part is cellular, the water inside is free nuclear. The coconut water from tender coconut is nothing but, that's what I was telling you, the coconut water is the free nuclear endosperm made up of thousands of nuclei which are yet to undergo or develop partitions between them. And the surrounding white kernel, that is which we grate, it is called coconut meat. Isn't it? This is nothing but the cellular endosperm where there are a lot of cells. So we saw now the endosperm. Maybe, so we have already learned what the endosperm looks like. Okay, so we saw that there is a zygote, and then above the zygote there is a primary endosperm cell, and then the nucleus undergoes karyokinesis. Peripherally it forms cellular endosperm, centrally it forms free nuclear endosperm. We also saw the example that is seen in coconut. In some seeds, the endosperm may get completely consumed by the developing. By the time the seed matures, if you open a mature, you bring peas from the market, you have groundnuts in your kitchen stored in containers, you have bean seeds which you will sprout by soaking them in water overnight. All this, if you see, they don't have endosperm in them. Because who used up the endosperm? The embryo used it up. By the time the seed became mature, the embryo used up all the endosperm. Okay, or there is a case where endosperm may persist even after the seed matures. Even once the seed matures, some amount of endosperm is still there. That means the embryo did not use up all the endosperm. This is seen in castor and coconut. So remember the examples. In some seeds, the endosperm is emptied. Who empties it? The embryo is very hungry. So it ate up all the endosperm. By the time the seed becomes mature or the embryo becomes mature, it has eaten up all the endosperm, like in the case of pea, groundnut and bean. In some cases the embryo is slow in eating, so even after the embryo matures, the seed matures. I told you the ovule becomes the seed. The ovule with the embryo becomes the seed, and even after the seed matures, you will find endosperm in it. That is seen in the case of castor and coconut. So coconut that you break open, it has an embryo in it, but still you have water to drink. The tender coconut water is there, the coconut meat is there. That means endosperm is still there, and such seeds are called endospermous seeds, because even after they mature, actually they are called by two names. They can be called albuminous, or they can be called endospermous seeds. Albuminous or endospermous seeds are what are those seeds in which even after the seeds mature, you will find endosperm in them. Now coming to the embryo, where was the zygote present? The zygote was present at the micropylar end, and that zygote divide. Now this is another very important question. Why does the zygote divide only after certain amount of endosperm is formed? That is because it needs assured nutrition. There should be somebody to provide nutrition for the developing embryo. So the zygote will wait for some time. I told you the zygote is waiting for the endosperm to develop. So the zygote divides only after a while after the endosperm divides, and that's why because it has to have somebody to provide nutrition to it. This is an adaptation, very important, to provide assured nutrition to the developing embryo. Otherwise, if the zygote starts dividing into the embryo, there will be nobody to give nutrition to it, because what if the endosperm has not developed, isn't it? That's why the zygote waits for some time. A very important give reason question. Why does the zygote divide only after certain amount of endosperm is formed? That is because it is an adaptation to provide assured 100% guaranteed nutrition to the developing embryo. Now let us see what happens to the zygote. Okay, I will show you only the zygote now inside the ovule. So this is the ovule. What are these? Integuments. Okay, what has already formed? Let me not focus on the endosperm now. Endosperm has already formed. I am only going to focus on this cell which is sitting here. This is the zygote. Now we shall see how in dicot plants the zygote undergoes development. Please remember, where is the zygote? The zygote is situated near the micropylar end of the ovule. So this is the zygote. Please now recall, how did the zygote come? What is it, haploid or diploid? It is diploid. I am not going to focus upon what is there above the zygote. We have finished all that. Primary endosperm cell, endosperm, everything is formed. Now the zygote is ready to divide. Okay, let us see what happens when the zygote starts dividing. I will show you only the important stages. For a very short period of time, the zygote becomes a two-celled structure. What was a one-celled will now become a two-celled structure. We can call this, so how did this zygote become a two-celled structure? By undergoing transverse division, that is mitosis. Now we can call this two-cell structure as early embryo or pro-embryo. Only two cells are there in the zygote. Okay, now these two cells will start taking shape of an embryo. Now let us see what shape it takes. Again, I'm going to draw the ovule, and I will show you the integument so that you know where this process is happening. It's happening towards the micropylar end. Okay, now see what has happened. This terminal cell, the cell which was present in the end, has become a massive cell. It becomes a larger cell. The other cells become very, very narrow, very small, and there is a chain of cells. And at the chain of cells, there will be a group of cells which are arranged in 4 cells above, 4 cells below. So see how the embryo is taking shape now. I'm not getting into the details. I'm just trying to simplify it for you. So see the embryo, what has happened now? The cell here remains as it is, okay? And then this cell, the terminal cell, divides. Actually, this one single cell is what divides into this entire chain of cells. And this terminal cell, notice that this cell is facing what? This cell is facing the chalaza of the ovule. This cell that faces the chalaza of the ovule, it becomes a globular structure. And this embryo is called the globular stage. Okay, and this chain of cells that is formed is called the suspensor. And this, the bottom, the lowest cell of the suspensor facing the micropyle is referred to as the haustorium. Only for your knowledge, this much of detail is not required for PU. Okay, so haustorium and suspensor. Who gave rise to the haustorium or suspensor? The bottom cell over here. Okay, and then who gave rise to the globular stage? The upper cell, which was facing the chalaza, has now given rise to the globular stage. So these are the stages of embryonic development. First, there is what? A zygote. Zygote divides transversely into 2-celled stage. The bottom cell towards the micropyle will give rise to a suspensor and haustorium. The upper cell that is facing the chalaza, the bottom of the ovule, the base of the ovule, will give rise to an embryo called the globular embryonic stage. Okay? Now let us see what happens after this. So we stopped at the globular embryo stage. Now again I will show you the ovule, integument. Wherever there is no integument, there is micropyle over there. So this is the larger cell near the micropyle, and then there is a chain of many cells. Now the globular embryo, what was globular, has started taking shape into a heart-shaped embryo. See, there will be a lot of cells inside. I'm not showing the cells. So the globular embryo, which is growing inside, will now become heart-shaped embryo. Remember, this chain is called the suspensor, and the terminal cell of the suspensor, which I am shading here, is called the haustorium. Okay, and you can see how the embryo has taken shape now into what is referred to as a heart-shaped embryo. So this heart-shaped embryo is the next stage in the development of dicot embryo. Now see what happens. Now imagine that this is the heart-shaped embryo. Let me again show you the ovule. What happens to the next stage? Now this heart-shaped embryo, these protuberances, these elevations which are found on the either sides of the heart, will start growing too much, will start growing at a faster rate, whereas at the pit, this is the pit of the heart shaped, here a small group of tissue develops. Now you will understand if I show you the next picture, next diagram here. So this is the bottom cell of the suspensor. What was it called? Haustorium. And then what are these chains of cells? These chains of cells are referred to as the suspensors. And then see how the heart-shaped embryo, it is becoming, the lobes of the heart are growing in size, and see this lobe and this lobe, it's growing in size now, it's growing rapidly. In the center there will be a mound of cells which grows very slowly. Okay, so you can imagine it was heart shaped like this. This part of the heart grows, this part of the heart grows, but in the pit there will be a mound of cells. See, this has grown at a faster rate, and in the center you have this depression. Now this mound of tissue that develops in the center between these two lobes of the heart. Now these two lobes of the heart are what will become the cotyledons or the embryonic leaf. There are two, one, two. That's why it is called dicot, isn't it? The two lobes of the heart-shaped embryo which start growing rapidly will now become the cotyledons. So how many cotyledons are there? Two cotyledons are there. And this group of tissue which is sitting snugly between the two cotyledons, it is what is now referred to as the plumule. And this basal part of the heart, let me shade, the basal part of the heart here will now become the radicle. Plumule is something that gives rise to the shoot system in the future plant once the seed germinates, and radicle is something that gives rise to the root system. The plumule and the radicle together constitute the embryonic axis. Is that clear? So how a heart-shaped embryo has taken shape into an embryo where you can clearly spot what? Two cotyledons. In the center of the two cotyledons you will find a group of tissue, a group of cells, actively dividing cells, that becomes the plumule. The bottom of the heart becomes the radicle. The plumule and the radicle together, please remember, the plumule plus the radicle together become the embryonic axis. Okay, the plumule and the radicle together become the embryonic axis, and now you can see the two cotyledons on the either sides. Okay, now to be very precise, if you consider this to be the plumule, I will try and fit it here, plumule, and this is the bottom part of the heart, that is the radicle. Okay, and somewhere from here the cotyledon is emerging. Correct? So if this is just a rough, I have shaded this portion, the radical portion, and this portion, actually this is bigger, the cotyledon is growing. Now this point above the attachment, see, this is the attachment of the cotyledon here, this is the attachment of the cotyledon here. The point of the embryonic axis immediately above the cotyledon and the point of the embryonic axis immediately below the cotyledon are given names. Now, just above the cotyledon and below the plumule, it is called epicotyl. And just below where the cotyledon, see, this is where the cotyledon emerges. Correct? Just below the cotyledon, we call it as the hypocotyl. And just above the cotyledon, it is, so epicotyl is present above where the point where the cotyledon emerges. This, let me put a big circle here, this would be the epicotyl, and here also let me put a big circle. This portion which is just below the cotyledon, the point where the cotyledon emerges, just below that is called the epicotyl. And what is this mound above? This is the plumule. And what is this shaded portion below? This is the radicle. Okay, now let us see how the embryo looks like in the later stages. Once again, I will draw the ovule. Now the ovule is becoming seed. It has become a seed now. Why? Because it has an embryo inside. So let me show the seed integument. It has now become the seed coat. Okay. Now see how the embryo has become. All the structures have become tiny now. The suspensor cell. The suspensor has also become very tiny now. Now what is massive is the radicle. See, it was only the shaded part has become elongated now. It has become the radicle. And then see the leaves. The cotyledon have become so big. And inside there is a mound. See how big the cotyledons have become, that it has curled itself inside the ovule. Here it was so small, here it was just a lobe of the heart. Then the cotyledon kept growing and the cotyledon folds over itself. See, two cotyledons are folded. Where is the plumule? Hidden between the two cotyledons is the plumule. That mound that you see is the plumule, which is the radicle. This part which I have shaded is the radicle. And see how small the suspensor has become. And what is this large coiled part, the folded part? These are the how many cotyledons are there? 1, 2. Two cotyledons are there, folded upon themselves. Correct? And now see what is sitting between the cotyledon, the plumule. And I told you, above the point of cotyledon emergence is called epicotyl. Below the point of emergence, the region of the embryonal axis is called hypocotyl. Below the hypocotyl is the radicle which I have shaded here. And above that there is a mound which is called the plumule. See how the embryo looks like. It was very simple, like a heart shaped. Then the lobes of the heart started growing. See, these are the lobes of the heart. See the top right part of the page here, all of you. These are the lobes. Lobe 1 and lobe 2. And see how they start growing. Lobe 1, lobe 2. They become cotyledon. Here they have become so huge that they have coiled themselves. They have bent. The cotyledon appears bent. And then you can see the plumule. Between the cotyledon, what is there? Plumule. And below the shaded part, what is the shaded part? Radicle. Now you should understand what is epicotyl and hypocotyl. It is depending on the point where the cotyledon emerges. Above the point, the region of the embryonal axis is called epicotyl. Below the point where the cotyledon emerges, that region is referred to as hypocotyl. Okay? So this is the dicot embryo. I've tried to simplify it as much as possible. You don't have to learn the greater details for the PU part. See, the zygote first forms a proembryo, then it forms a globular embryo, then it forms a heart-shaped embryo, and then it becomes a mature embryo. Correct? And I can, here there is some space. So let me show you again. If this is the ovule, it has now become the seed with the integuments. See how the mature embryo, the embryo which has almost completely developed. I told you that the suspensor becomes very tiny near the micropyle. This is the micropyle. Now the radicle has become massive. See the radicle. And then I told you the leaves, the cotyledons have coiled. Two cotyledons are there. This is 1, this is 2. Between the two cotyledons, what is this mound? Plumule. And what is this shaded portion? Radicle. This is how the embryo is sitting inside the developing seed. We should not call it ovule now because it has a developing embryo inside. So these two are cotyledons. In between the cotyledon, plumule. The region just above below the plumule where above the point of cotyledon emergence is referred to as epicotyl, I told you. So for you to see epicotyl, again let me show the embryo here. This is the radicle. This is the points where cotyledon emerge. This is the plumule. So the cotyledon have folded now, isn't it? Now this is the plumule. This point, this is the point where the cotyledon emerges. Above this region is called epicotyl. Below this point, this is called hypocotyl. And this entire part below, opposite to the plumule, is the radicle. Okay? So here they have given an inverted diagram. They have shown micropyle above. So imagine this is sitting inside the ovule and integument is over here. So that's why they've shown it upside down here. The same diagrams which I discussed with you have been shown upside down, because here in this diagram the micropyle is facing above and chalaza is facing below of the ovule. So see how the primary endosperm nucleus is formed. Now they have not called it central cell. What have they called it? Primary endosperm cell. And see, the synergids are degenerating. What is formed? Zygote is formed. And see how the antipodals are degenerating near the chalaza. See the zygote, it became two-celled pro-embryo, then it developed into heart-shaped, globular, then heart-shaped. The two lobes of the heart grow, and then it encloses a mound between the two leaves, cotyledons. That mound is called plumule. Then the basal part of the embryo closer to the micropyle is called radicle. See how the size of the suspensor has become small, and the two lobes of the heart which grew will now become what? Will now become, see how they are bending, will now become the cotyledons. Okay? So this is because there are two cotyledons, we call it as a dicot embryo. So this is the structure sitting inside the ovule. See, this is the plumule, this mound over here. Plumule as well as this shaded part, which is the radicle. And see, the radicle gets covered with a root cap also. Correct? The plumule and the radicle, as you all are aware, is the embryonic axis. Just below the plumule, if this is the point of origin of cotyledon, just above that you will find the epicotyl on both sides. And what is this portion below the emergence of the point from below? This is the point where the cotyledon emerged. This region which is present below the point where the cotyledon emerges, we had called it as hypocotyl. I will show it to you again. So this is the plumule. Okay. Now this is from where the cotyledon is emerging. It is coiled like this. Correct? The cotyledon is coiled. It's folded because it's very, very huge in size. And then we have the lower part of the embryonic axis. And what part which I have always been shading? The part which I have been shading is the radicle. And now it is covered with a protective structure called root cap. And this is the point from where the cotyledons emerged. So the region below that is the hypocotyl. The region of the embryo sac, the embryo below the point of attachment of the cotyledon. Now what is this region? This narrow portion which you see, or this point where above the cotyledon emerges, above the point where the cotyledon emerges is the epicotyl. Epicotyl is very, very small to be identified. And this tissue is the plumule. Isn't it? So that's what you can see here. Plumule, the small mound. And then the two structures which become curved because they are growing, the lobes of the heart, cotyledon, the area below the point of attachment of cotyledon, then the radicle which becomes the root in the future embryo. So the radicle, after it germinates in the seed, it becomes the root. The plumule becomes the shoot. Okay, so this is the structure of a typical, and you can also see epicotyl and hypocotyl. All right. So this is a very important 5-mark question. Explain the structure of the embryo with a neat label diagram. Okay. How is a monocot embryo different from dicot embryo? In a monocot embryo, there is only one cotyledon. See, this is the embryo. It has the same structure. It also develops inside the ovule at the micropylar end only. It also has a shoot apex, that is the plumule, and then it has radicle covered with a root cap. But notice that there is only one cotyledon. This one cotyledon, whereas in dicot we saw there were two cotyledons. This shield-like cotyledon that is seen on the side of the embryo. See, it is sitting beside the embryo. If this is the embryo, it is sitting next to the embryo. This is called the scutellum. That's why we call it as monocot, because there is only one cotyledon in it. No two cotyledons, one cotyledon in it. And then what you should know is the two structures called coleorhiza and coleoptile. Coleorhiza is a protective covering, is an undifferentiated sheath of tissue that covers the radicle. See, this is the coleorhiza. It covers the radicle. This is unique to monocot embryo. Coleoptile is a hollow sheath. See, it is covering the plumule. So what covers the plumule is the coleoptile, and what covers the radicle is the coleorhiza. And inside you can see the plumule is taking shape into a shoot apex, and embryonic leaves are also forming. These structures are the embryonic leaves. Sorry, not embryonic leaves. The new embryonic leaf itself is cotyledon, right? Scutellum. So the young leaves of the new generation is forming around the shoot apex. That is the plumule. The plumule has already taken shape into a shoot apex surrounded by young leaves. And that is covered by a protective covering, a hollow sheath that is called what? Coleoptile. And what is covering the radicle? The structure that the protective covering that covers the radicle is called coleorhiza. Where is the cotyledon? How many cotyledons? In dicot we saw 2 cotyledons, but here there is only 1 cotyledon. So how many cotyledons? 1. What is that cotyledon called? It is called scutellum. Actually, see, there is one more cotyledon which stops developing. It degenerates. This cotyledon which failed to develop is called epiblast. A small projection you can see. So it's as if in monocot what happens is, there is a heart-shaped embryo. See, this is the heart. I told you that the heart has 2 lobes. In dicot, both of them will grow. Both the lobes will grow to become 2 cotyledons. In monocot, only 1 lobe will grow. See, only 1 lobe is growing. That becomes the scutellum. The other lobe which does not grow is the epiblast, and this mound inside is the plumule. So only 1 lobe of the heart is growing in the monocot. The other lobe of the heart is becoming a reduced structure which is called the epiblast. In dicot, both lobes of the heart will grow to form 2 cotyledons. In monocot, only 1 lobe of the heart will grow to become this cotyledon. This cotyledon, the single cotyledon or embryonic leaf, is referred to as the scutellum. Okay? So this also is a 5-mark question. The structure of the monocot embryo, position, everything is the same. This is also located inside the ovule in the micropylar region, just like how we saw over there, but the development is different. Okay, the suspensor formation is also there, but slight differences are there over here. But what you should remember here is that this is an embryo with only 1 cotyledon. It also has an embryonic axis. Whenever you see plumule and radicle, that portion is called embryonic axis. But here they have called the plumule as a shoot apex because it has started developing a shoot apical meristem surrounded by baby leaves, young leaves. Okay, when the plant germinates, young leaves are already there inside the seed, inside the developing embryo. And then they have called the radicle as radicle only, which is covered by a protective root cap and an undifferentiated sheath called coleorhiza. Coleoptile covers the shoot apex, coleorhiza covers the root apex, that is the radicle and the root cap. Please remember, the radicle becomes the root system after germination, and the plumule becomes the shoot system. Plumule and the radicle together constitute the embryonic axis. So what did we learn in today's class? We learned double fertilization, the process of syngamy, formation of zygote, triple fusion, formation of triploid primary endosperm nucleus, and after that we saw how the endosperm develops. Please remember, it is always endosperm develops before the zygote. And why does the zygote wait for some time until a certain amount of endosperm is formed to provide or to ensure assured nutrition by the endosperm? Then we saw endospermic and non-endospermic seeds. Finally, we saw how the embryo, with specific regard to dicot embryo, I have taught you with very less details, which is required for you for your PU part as given in your NCERT, how the dicot embryo took shape, how the heart-shaped embryo is formed, how the lobes of the heart become cotyledons. But we also saw the monocot embryo in which only 1 lobe of the heart enlarges to form the scutellum or a single cotyledon. Only 3 questions for homework today. Structure of dicot embryo with a labeled diagram, you have to explain. Structure of monocot embryo with a labeled diagram, and you have to describe in detail the 2 processes of double fertilization, in starting from how the synergids are pierced by the pollen tube, the male gametes are released, one of them reaches the egg nucleus, one of them reaches the polar nuclei. So you have to write about both syngamy and triple fusion. So with this, we complete the 5th lecture under the chapter Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants. Thank you.